and hello, obviously from Austin. My name is Jocelyn Mattis, and it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the 8th annual Reverse Pitch Competition. The Reverse Pitch Competition is a partnership between the City of Austin and the Austin Young Chamber. And I am honored to be here tonight and serve as your MC to support local entrepreneurs and businesses that are showing commitment to the circular economy. I currently manage climate impact investing for Cisco Foundation, where we have a $100 million climate commitment that is focused on supporting early stage innovation across climate action categories. But what's probably more relevant is prior to this current role, I was located in Southeast Asia, where I was working specifically on circular economy, trying to reduce the pollution of waste, specifically plastic waste, into the environment and largely our oceans, but also into low-income communities. And so circular economy is not just an interest of mine, but a passion of mine. And I'm really excited to see the Austin community be behind another initiative around kind of recycling, reusing, repurposing, and building a more circular waste system. Because we are virtually joined tonight, my goal is to make this event as fun and interesting as engaging. Most of us have been through a full business day, so do pour yourself a good coffee, and we're happy to get things going for this evening. I am going to ask that you show your support and enthusiasm after each presentation by using emojis or the chat feature. So if you do want to engage or share, please feel free to use those even while people are presenting, but please do not unmute yourself and speak in the middle of someone's presentation. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. So let's start with the basics. For those of you that might be new, or this might be your first reverse pitch competition, this is a competition where local companies pitch byproduct materials such as sawdust from the furniture school here today, and asks entrepreneurs if it can be repurposed or reused without just throwing it away. Next, contestants, which are some of you in the audience tonight, will create business ideas to repurpose these byproducts and expand or create a new business venture out of them. The hope is to inspire entrepreneurs to find innovative solutions that either keep these materials out of the landfill or put them towards a higher value or better use case. After today's pitches, contestants will work for about 7 weeks with mentors and advisors to craft their business idea and submit the application to be scored by the panel of judges. And there are prizes involved. So let's talk a bit of prizes that are in store. This competition will end up with 4 teams who will be named Innovation Fellows. They will participate in a 3-part accelerator with program partners to help refine this idea. More details on the accelerator will come shortly, but in short, Innovation Fellows will have the opportunity to receive $4,000 of cash, access to the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corps, I-Corps, which is a program at the University of Texas at Austin. They will have automatic entry to pitch in front of potential investors at the 3rd annual Circular Austin Showcase in August of 2023. There will also be a discount for an all-access pass to Austin WeWork locations, a $250 credit from services by Build-A-Sign, and also will gain an Austin Young Chamber corporate membership, as well as free coaching, education, and promotional assistance. So that's a big basket of goodies to those of you who come up with great ideas and are able to translate that idea from concept to reality. So the agenda for this evening is a pretty dense one, the fact that we have many presenters here today. So let's talk about some housekeeping rules. Our material suppliers are going to be pitching their byproducts to you, the entrepreneurs in the audience. You will learn about how the byproducts are generated, the material composition, and other important details to help inspire you to choose which byproduct, one or more, to work with in this competition. Material suppliers pitching one material will have 7 minutes to pitch, followed by 4 minutes of audience Q&A. Questions should be entered into the chat, which you will find in the bottom center of your screen, so the little message bubble. If you are not familiar with Zoom, you can click the chat bubble icon at the center of the bottom bar. A chat box will pop up and you can comment with your questions as you wish. To make sure everyone can access the chat, please feel free to currently click the chat box and say a hello and maybe a little bit about yourself and where you're joining us from today. We will try to get through as many as possible before the time is up for each supplier. Comments of encouragement are always welcome in the chat for our presenters. After the final presentation, you will have the opportunity to actually meet with these suppliers and ask them additional questions. We will be doing this in breakout rooms, so there will be one supplier in each room, and you're free to join the rooms that you would like to join in and out until 8 p.m. A friendly reminder to please keep yourself muted until we enter the breakout rooms, and please be respectful and courteous in the chat. If you are having technical issues, please send a private chat message to the Austin Young Chamber account. You'll see in the option to send a private message in the chat box. Another reminder that tonight's night is being recorded and will be uploaded to reversepitch.org by tomorrow evening. You will receive the link to this and other information in an email in your inbox tomorrow. So before we begin, I'd like to take a minute to thank the organizations who have supported the 2023 pitch competition. First off, thank you to our Innovation Prize contributors, which is the City of Austin's Resource Recovery, Economic Development Department, and the Office of Innovation, Austin Young Chamber, BuildASign, the University of Texas at Austin, and WeWork. Thanks to all of our promotional partners who also helped us get the word about this competition to their networks. And of course, thank you to our 2023 judges panel, including Nina Ho, Marianne Ward-Paradosa, and Radney Wood. Thank you to our technical advisors and mentors who are also planning to help create some great circular business ideas. And now please join me in welcoming Madeline Morgan, who is the Circular Economy Program Manager and with Austin Resource Recovery, who's going to share a bit more about these changes and exciting opportunities from the City of Austin's Circular Economy Program.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I did just want to pause real quick. For those in the audience, are you able to use the chat? I just want to make sure because I haven't seen anything in the chat and I want to make sure. Okay, great. Oh, perfect. Wanted to make sure that wasn't a setting we needed to change on our end. Please feel free to interact in the chat to help make this a little bit more interactive. But yeah, thanks, Jocelyn. And again, thank you for being here tonight. We're really grateful to all of our partners who make this event come to life. It's hard to believe it's our 8th time doing this. If it's your first time, welcome. If you're coming back, we're glad this event continues to pique your interest. And we really appreciate you spending your Wednesday evening with us. For those not familiar, we can go to the next slide, please. The city's Circular Economy Program is a joint partnership between Austin Resource Recovery and the Economic Development Department. Our work supports the city's zero waste goal to divert 90% of all material from landfills and incinerators while supporting businesses in the circular economy and creating sustainable jobs that lead to upward mobility for historically marginalized Austinites. We have 3 main pillars in our program: catalyzing business innovation through business retention, recruitment, and entrepreneur support, and through competitions like this. Creating programs to encourage behavior change among Austin residents to help support the businesses that we have in this circular ecosystem. And the last pillar is leading by example, looking internally at the city's operations and putting programs into place to increase circularity in how we buy, use, and discard materials as an organization. Next slide. As I mentioned, Reverse Pitch is one of the programs that falls under our catalyzing business innovation. We have some other programs as well, but there's one in particular I'd like to highlight, and we're going to drop a link in the chat. We have a monthly newsletter that we curate and send out each month that not only has information about what our program is up to, but also different types of networking, award opportunities, funding opportunities that we think are relevant to circular economy enterprises. So we really encourage you, if you think this is applicable to you, to sign up and stay in touch with our program. And if you want to learn more about our program and our services, you can visit austintexas.gov/circular-economy. We'll drop that link in the chat as well. And don't worry if you don't catch these links, they will be in our follow-up email that goes out tomorrow. Next slide, please. Couple of things I just want to touch on that our department has coming up in case you'd like to take advantage of them. There is a multifamily composting information session tomorrow evening. It's virtual. Be dropping information in the chat on that. And then there's also a soil kitchen this weekend, which is where you can bring soil from your garden, and we will test that at no cost for you to tell you if you have chemicals or if you need to stop putting extra fertilizer in your soil because it's already has enough. And then lastly, an event that our program is hosting are the Circular Enterprise Connect and Share. And this is geared towards business owners or managers of circular enterprises here in Austin. And it's going to be a half-day networking and educational session. And the first time we're running something like this. So we hope that you will be able to join us for that if you fall into that category. All right, now on to reverse pitch. Jocelyn mentioned contestants can use one or more byproduct materials pitched tonight. And in order to be eligible to compete, competitors must live in, have permanent residence, or go to school in Austin MSA, and they must establish their business operation within the city of Austin limits. There is also, a very important piece of the competition in order to enter. In addition to watching or attending this or watching this recording, anyone who wants to compete has to submit this intent to compete form by March 12th, end of day, 11:59 p.m. We typically get a lot of questions about this, so just make sure you're listening. It's this intent to compete is not a formal form. It's really just an informal concept statement about the material or materials you want to work with and what you think you'll be pursuing. If you end up, pivoting over the course of the next 6 weeks that follow, that is totally okay. This is really just a kind of signal to us that you're serious and you want to compete in this competition, and so that we make sure you're getting the information and resources you need to be successful. So yeah, and we'll be sending out the link as we've mentioned in that follow-up email tomorrow. If you are interested in competing, we'll be hosting virtual office hours next week on March 7th. There'll be 2 times, 12:30 to 1 p.m. and 5:30 to 6 p.m. And this is really just time we're blocking in case you have additional questions that don't get answered here tonight about the competition and how it operates. The material suppliers will not be in those office hours. It'll just be ARR and Young Chamber staff. But just in case you have any questions about the intent to compete form or anything along the process that follows, we'll be available to answer those questions for you. We also will be hosting 2 free workshops exclusive to reverse pitch competitors, and those will be offered on March 21st. And that one will be both in person and virtual, and so hybrid style around ideation and just kind of getting your preliminary business canvas together. And then we'll be having a workshop on March 28th from 6 to 7:30. That one will be virtual and focus on circular business principles and how to incorporate those into your pitch. We'll be matching mentors. So when you submit the intent to compete on March 12th, it'll also ask you who you'd like to be matched with for a mentor, and we will be matching those. And you'll receive that information on March 14th. And the final deadline for the competitor applications will be on April 23rd. It's about 7 weeks from today. And that will consist of your business plan, which will provide a template, and a pro forma, which we will provide a template for. And then if you have a rendering or a drawing of your idea, that's also the place that you would submit it for the judging panel. And then we'll have a panel of judges that will take about a week to review all of the submissions, and we'll come up with the top 4 teams who will be named Reverse Pitch Innovation Fellows, and they will be eligible for our Innovation Fellow prize package, which includes our Innovation Fellows Accelerator that will run through the summer. Next slide. The accelerator will be in 3 parts. And the way that the cash stipend will work is that you'll receive a portion of the stipend after each part of completing this accelerator. So it's 3 parts. And upon completing the deliverables, which will include curated workshops, community calls, and submitting deliverables around these topics, you will then be eligible to receive that portion of the stipend for a total of $4,000. And then at the end of this accelerator, kind of gets capped off with automatic entry into our 3rd annual Circular Austin Showcase, which is scheduled for late August. And you'll be competing against 4 additional early stage circular startups for additional prize money. So I think that is all about the competition and how it works. And again, please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. But I'm going to kick it back to Jocelyn for the reason you're all here tonight.
Awesome. So now is the fun part where we get to hear from our amazing material suppliers. And so without further ado, please welcome our very first presenter, which is Kelly Gardner from Already Automotive.
Hello, everybody. We're happy to be here. My name is Kelly Gardner. This is Benjamin Ramirez.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time.
We are an automotive body and paint shop in South Central Austin. We work with a lot of the dealerships on the Motor Mile, doing their reconditioning for used cars and trade-ins and such. So we see all types of makes and models, from ding doors to whole car collision repair. And unfortunately, in that world, there's a lot of leftover parts that just end up in the landfill. We're excited to be part of this program and see if we can't find a use for that. Austin, in the way that it's growing, we're about it and we're hoping to see it succeed. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not only dealership vehicles, it's also insurance jobs. So say, for instance, you have metal bumper, you have metals all the way to plastic. As of right now, we have people that come and actually pick up the metal that will take it and, recycle it for money. The bumpers before, they were previously recycled by the companies that we actually buy parts from. However, because of COVID, they do not recycle them anymore. And so we end up cutting them up and paying to have them sent to the landfill.
And the majority of those are made up of thermoplastics, which includes like polycarbonate, polypropylene, other words I could never say 3 times fast. And those are turned away from the recycling centers, not because they're not recyclable, but usually they have an inability to process them or their size, it works against us. So each bumper kind of has a label on what it's made out of. You can probably hit to the next slide. And it's not just the bumpers, the headlights and various trims as well, I think can all be thrown into there. But because people aren't the best drivers, there's a steady supply for the people competing in this program. You would never run short, unfortunately. And they can be, minor damage to completely torn apart. There's other shops that would, of course, willingly donate as well, and happy to do so, because normally it is, like you said, it costs us a fee to get rid of them.
Yeah, I've seen people use actually recycle tailgates, stuff like that, use them as and build them into stools to to benches as well. I know this stuff has a use for someone that can actually, figure out exactly how they would like to use it. Kelly's actually brainstormed a few ideas as well that she thinks could really work. all this stuff could be separated better, of course, on our end. However, this is how it's set up, when this pitch came along. All of this could be organized to where it's an easier pull and easier to look at.
By type
Again,
instead of-
yeah, by type.
Various dealerships use different components to make up their parts, and those are all labeled accordingly.
I mean, even metal pieces that could be used as shooting targets. I mean, believe me, there's multiple uses for this stuff that could be fun at the same time. That's somebody that could really think about something to melt these bumpers down and to use the plastic. Of course, something substantial. It's like I said, these do go on vehicles. However, they are replaced once the structure.
There'd be a liability if we.
Yeah,
reuse
there would be
them.
as a point to liability. I wouldn't say necessarily reusing the bumpers. But if they could find something to use them for as a different material, as a material for themselves to build upon, then I think it would be something great.
Mhm. And next slide, I think. Specifically, obviously, the polycarbonate I have here, but there are various types. And like I said, they are labeled accordingly, but they really are ideal for recycling. And it's sad to me that they don't make it into a program to be reused. There's a couple of other people that have done something similar, but on a much smaller scale. So I'm really hopeful that they can do it here in Austin. With the thermoplastics, they could be shredded and reheated, and then they can be molded into pretty much anything. And typically at that point, they can be even stronger than whatever the original, product was, which could even be bulletproof. I think the correct term is bullet resistant, but that could have various uses. Of course, we put here, they could be used in schools as desk items, but doubling as a mean of protection. Sad but true, that is the world we live in. Building materials in lieu of plywood or lumber obviously would save our trees. Better waterproofing areas like bathrooms, kitchens. One way or the other, I would say that they should avoid landfills at all costs. They're made with chemicals like BPA, which leach into our earth, and obviously that's the whole goal of the program. And we're excited to work with people and figuring out what that could be.
Also, just real quick too, on the material side, on the metals, some of these are aluminum, which a lot of the newer vehicles are aluminum. And guess what? Same thing. So the metal guy will come by, pick up the parts, and then take them to the metal, recycling, and to actually sell the parts. So, I'd rather be able to give this back into a recycling program like this, which is what I think is more beneficial to where, the community could actually benefit from it.
Their business, etc. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you all so much. We are at time. So we now have about 4 minutes for Q&A. Any questions from the group? I notice we have 2 I'll start with, and that are, what volume are you able to supply? And are there any considerations around picking up material, like a specific day or a specific time? So those are the 2 questions we already have.
Typically, it's like once or twice a month. As much as they wanted, they could probably have, I would say, easily 50, 100. Do we have
50 to 100 bumpers of the plastic stuff. It just depends on how busy things are. It's consistent to where, we have to have this done once a month.
Yeah.
This is held up. Yeah, sometimes more. This has been held up. I have a metal guy that stops by every week, to grab the stuff.
And if it was a volume issue where they were wanting more, that there's no short supply. Like I said, we're one shop, but already discussing with other shops, they would be happy to contribute to this as well. The same thing. So if there was an exact number, I'm sure we could discuss that.
Great, that's helpful. Any other questions from the group? Great. There's one question. Let me do that. Maybe Upshaw asks, starting with Jennifer Nichols, asked, do you have seatbelt material or seat fabric like vinyl that you would be open to having taken from wrecked vehicles?
Not seatbelt stuff.
Well, because of the liability.
Yeah.
Not to be used as seatbelts, right? Just the fabric
The
itself.
vinyl. It sounds like the seatbelt material or seat fabric like vinyl.
I mean, not
Not to be used as seatbelts, right? Okay, I think in something like that, that would be okay. But once a car is in an accident, any manufacturer and insurance gets very leery about those being disposed of.
they're saying not to be used as seatbelts.
Oh.
I mean, typically, yeah, what we do is throw them away.
So that sounds like there might
Those
be.
arts and crafts.
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, I think that could be something that could be easily discussed. And
Yeah, but
the fabric.
I mean, seatbelts, like there's not like a ton of them, is what I should say on that.
So we only have a couple minutes late or left. There's another question which might be for others in the group, which is why aren't these specific car parts recycled usually? Why don't the vendors offer, melting and recycling them? Maybe that's some background context on.
Absolutely. Most of the time there's multiple parts involved that would have to be torn down and each separated accordingly. And again, the size of them.
No, well, they used to be actually recycled that's what the way I started it off as well. So like since before COVID, everything was picked up and recycled, by these particular vendors that would rebuild these bumpers. But ever since, for aftermarket pieces. After COVID though, however, like the parts companies stopped doing this.
Interesting.
So again, these things, they just go into the trash. Typically, like what we'll do is we'll cut them up, and then we'll have them hauled off.
Right. Great, thanks. We are just about at time. We might have 30 seconds for any last minute question. Otherwise, it looks like I guess Artie Childers asked, are some over molded metal?
Molded metal.
Like the plastic part
over
molded over metal.
Right, yeah.
Not attached to, like the bumper cover, and then you have your absorber. They're separate, metal and plastic.
I don't understand exactly what he's saying on that.
There are mixed materials. Oh, yeah. Why they're not recycled? Is that a question or a statement?
I think it's a statement. So
yes. Metal and plastic needing to be separated.
Yeah.
No, on the most part, everything.
Thermoplastics.
Yes, but all the metal has been separated from the plastic.
Great. Awesome. Well, if anyone else has additional questions for Already Automotive, please do keep in mind and stay around for the networking time. You can jump in a breakout room, unmute yourself, and be able to ask all the questions that your heart desires. But now on to
our contact info.
Oh, yes. Feel free to put your contact info in the chat if y'all want, and anyone who's interested in that as well can do that. On to the second presenter, which is Austin Waldo from the Austin School of Furniture, who will be discussing sawdust. So go ahead and take it away, Austin.
All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you are ready for an exciting presentation on sawdust. I know you are all looking forward to this all day long. So without further ado, my name is Austin Waldo. I'm the founder and managing director of the Austin School of Furniture. And no, it is not named after myself. I'm originally from Kansas. But the Austin School of Furniture is that we are a school that teaches adults how to make furniture. So we are focused on fine custom furniture. It can be anything from tables, chairs, decorative cabinets, and we do everything from very, very short evening classes, kind of for the beginner, to a much longer 3-month full-time training program. So we focus on not only those that are looking to do this as a hobby, that want to get away from their tech job computer that they're doing all day, to those that are looking for a profession or a trade and want to start working with their hands, making custom furniture. So next slide, please. Today, we're going to talk about sawdust. Next slide. I'm sure most people kind of have a relative idea of what sawdust is, and there's not going to be anything super enlightening in this presentation about that, but it is essentially small particles that are coming off of the wood that we are producing when we're cutting and milling the wood. So those come in all shapes and sizes, from actual dust that you would think of floating around in the air to chips and shavings and small splinters. For the most part, anything that is large enough to individually pick up in your hand would be more of a piece of wood that would probably go into a bin that we would collect, either to be thrown away or into the scrap bin that gets reused. But the dust created from cutting, anywhere from very, very small microns to this small kind of shavings, get collected through our collectors. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a second. We at our school only use domestic woods. So those are trees that grow in the United States. We don't use woods that are imported from outside the United States. There's a whole another presentation that can be given on those and reasons not to use those. But for the most part, for us, exotic woods sometimes have allergies, allergens that people react to. So cutting those in the classes can make people react to those. The materials that we're using, those woods, can range in their species. So in the United States, there are hundreds of different varieties of trees and individual species within those. And so we are using both hardwoods and softwoods. And those can be a lot of the trees that you're familiar with, especially ones that grow here in Austin, the oaks and the cedars that we have, to ones that are coming from other states, the nice cherries and walnuts and things like that. So within those species, they have different densities, they have different colors, and those are all mixed together within our containers. Next slide. Oh, I think we missed one. Yep, there we go. So these are two of the large collectors that we have. So a 55-gallon and a 75-gallon barrel that are connected to these large collectors. And there's about 10 machines that are connected to these individual collectors. And so as the material is being milled, the dust is being pulled away from the tools. That helps to keep the wood out of the machine for its maintenance. It also keeps it from overheating. Of course, keeps most of it out of the air, which is something we focus on in terms of safety. So we also have 4, sometimes 5, plus multiple shop vacs collector systems throughout the shops. So plus these barrels, we maybe have 10 different collection areas of sawdust. And the different collectors are used on different machines and can be dust to shavings to chips. It's all different. But when we empty them, which is quite often, that all gets mixed in and thrown into the dumpster at this point. So we don't necessarily have a regular schedule of when we're emptying this. If you can see in that far right side of that picture, there's that little red dot. That's a little light that goes off when the bin gets full. So they get dumped whenever they're full. And a class that is milling a lot, these can be emptied multiple times per class. So on the high side, we could maybe produce 300, 400, 500 gallons of sawdust in a week. And if there's not class that week, then we're obviously not producing any. So it definitely varies. All right, next slide, please. So like I said, the actual sawdust is varied in its size, and when we dump it is pretty varied as well. We are, in terms of getting rid of it, currently putting it to the dumpster. So we are looking for something out of this that makes it a little bit easier, that we don't have to haul it off to a recycling place. If there is some sort of business, we're happy to take it to them with some time compensation. But really all we're looking for is just the removal of sawdust where it's not going into the landfill. And similar to already, there are hundreds of furniture makers around that I know that would also be interested in this, as well as if there is a solution that is scalable, millions of garage woodworkers out there that are producing sawdust as well. Next slide. So there are already a lot of possible uses out there. Am I running out of time? Let's see.
You're good. You have about a minute.
Okay, mulch, insulation, are pretty simple ones. I know a lot of people dump it outside. Pet bedding is another one that it does get used for. I did put an asterisk next to that because there are some types of woods that are toxic to some type of animals. If you're a horse person, walnut is toxic to horses, and that is a wood that we use all the time. I've seen sawdust get used to collect and dry up spills, mushroom growth substrate. There's all kinds of agricultural uses, barbecue, smoker wood, and sawdust bricks, and fire starter. And let me go to the next slide. Using it as some sort of smoker material is great, but also sometimes you don't want it to be on fire. So that is a possible issue that I mentioned here. So with our sawdust, we're producing a mixture of species, which that might not be ideal for the solution. It varies in size, varies in quantity, varies in frequency. And as I said, some species are toxic to animals. Sometimes it's flammable. And some softwoods have a lot of oil in them, just a natural oil. And that is always not great to burn. It produces a lot of smoke. Next slide, please. And that's me. If you are interested after this, I would be happy to talk to you about sawdust or furniture, one or the other.
Perfect, and right on the time mark. So now we are going to open Q&A. Any question? Oh, I think there's already a question here, maybe. Any questions for them on for the Austin School of Furniture from the group? Or was it just so clear? Oh, here is one. Kelly asks, will the city of Austin allow your sawdust to be composted?
Not for free, no.
Not for free. There we go. Bill B asks, does the wood have any chemical treatments?
Not the hardwood or softwood that we're using. We occasionally are cutting plywood or a product called MDF, and that does have chemicals and glues within it. But the amount that we use is pretty minimal. So the majority of what we're milling is only the hardwoods and the softwoods.
Got it. And is that already mixed in?
Yeah, so it'd all be mixed in
Got it.
with the bins.
Kelly asks, is it all unstained raw wood?
Yes. If we're removing some sort of stain or paint, that is done kind of in a separate process, but for the most part, we are using just lumber from the lumber yard that has no stain or any treatment to it.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, one question from Wilson asks, why are the current companies already making bricks, insulation, or other products and not taking your sawdust?
Yeah. I don't know why they're not taking our sawdust, but the companies that do a lot of that are getting much bigger quantities, and they're not working with individuals, to my knowledge at least. And a lot of them are not in a warm area like here. They're up north where woodworkers have individual pellet stoves or something like that. But I still think there's a solution down here possibly.
Hey, Adam, or I'm sorry, Austin from the Cheap Seats. One of the reasons I can tell you that folks aren't making bricks using sawdust as a substrate, because our byproduct could actually easily substitute for fiberglass and cement. There's decades and decades of research and just, proven reliability with those types of substrates, and nobody's willing to put in the time and the R&D necessarily to actually go forward with something like that. So if you're wanting to promote like an eco-friendly brick or cement block, that's just a time-consuming process.
Thank you, Brent. That context is really helpful. And RD also adds that safety and silicosis need to be part of the conversation. So great. Maddie shares some sawdust innovation inspiration. Kelly asks, what about the use for soundproofing?
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a good idea.
Great. Any other questions? We have about a minute left. Great. Well, it sounds like this one got the brain juices flowing. So if any of you all have additional thoughts or ideas, do feel free during the networking time to jump on into Austin's breakout room and maybe share some thoughts, ask some questions, or share some relevant experience or knowledge that it sounds like some people in the room have. We're going to move on for the sake of time to our next presenter, which I have as Wells Mason from Builders First Source, who will be talking about some wood pallets and use cases for that. So go ahead, Wells, and feel free to take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Austin Young Chamber and City of Austin. This is a great program that y'all are doing, and we're happy to be excited to be a part of it. So I'm with a company called Builders First Source, and I'm in a business development role for Builders First Source. Builders First Source is a Fortune 500 company. It's the largest company of its kind in the country. Locations in 43 states from coast to coast, like 30,000 employees. We sell building materials. We are both a supplier and a manufacturer of building materials. And those building materials largely for residential construction, also multifamily and light commercial projects. But those building materials consist of lumber and trusses and wall panels, windows, doors, trim products, siding, decking, you name it, largely wood products. And we've got, like I said, locations coast to coast. That includes lumber yards, truss plants, window warehouses, millwork facilities, as well as showrooms for customers from coast to coast. And so what I'm going to do is take you through the first, I guess, 10 or 12 slides real quickly, just to give you an overview of Builders First Source for those of y'all that aren't familiar with this company. And then I'll dive into the products that I can talk about today that we'd like to make available for this program. So again, a very large company. Next slide, please. We've been in business for decades. It was a company that's gone through different mergers and used to be BMC and Stripling Blake Lumber and Stock Building Supply, for those of you who have been in Austin for a long time. Next slide, please. These days, back in January 2020, we merged BMC and Builders First Source merged into the company that it is today. And you can see the size and breadth of this company. So I'll be just talking about products from a couple different locations in the Austin area today. But as you can see from this map, we've got locations nationally. And so there is a great deal of scalability in some of the products that we'll be talking about today, and some of the opportunities that you'll have working with me on this program. Next slide, please. This is our recent tagline, outperform today, transform tomorrow. And so we're doing a lot of new things in construction. Next slide, please. Looks like I've got a lag here. There we go. Again, this is the picture of us showing, I think this is a video. Let's go to the next slide. There are videos embedded in this presentation that we don't have time to show you today, but feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to share those with you at a later time. Let's see. I'm not seeing our slideshow now.
Yeah, it just came off the screen. I don't know if Tech wants to throw it back up the presentation if we can.
And while we're looking for that, my role is, like I said, business development in Central Texas. So I cover a large area, but I also work with my counterparts all over the country. So again, there's a great deal of scalability in these solutions. End-to-end solutions related to construction, remodeling, and new construction. Next slide, please. Some new products that we're doing, design and building information modeling, that's BIM. Next slide, please. Lumber and building materials distribution. You've probably seen our trucks, all over the place. Next slide, please. Component manufacturing. And what we'll be talking about, the products that we're talking about today are partly related to what's coming out of of this piece of our business. Next slide, please. Millwork doors and windows. We saw an awful lot of these. And so again, we've got a lot of byproducts, industrial waste products related to this particular product category. Next slide, please. And digital tools. We do work with an awful lot of general contractors and architects and designers around the country. And so it's an end, just a start to finish solution for construction. I think the next slide dives into the products that I'd like to talk about today. And there's actually two products. One is pallets and the other is I-joist cutoffs. And the pallets that you see in these pictures, this is all from one location in the Austin area, 4x4 pallets, pallets that hold 3068 doors, pallets that hold 3080 doors, and we've got 16-foot pallets. These are mostly built with spruce and pine, and they are largely they're unfinished, just raw wood, and of course they're constructed with nails. Next slide, please. Also, I-joist cutoffs that are built with OSB and southern yellow pine, and in most cases they're less than 2 feet long. We've also got some 10-footers that are unsellable that are also available as part of this program. Next slide, please. You see the number of pallets. This is just one location, approximately 600 6-foot, 8-inch, and 8-foot pallets per month, and approximately 70 to 116-foot pallets per month. And with the I-joist cutoffs, anywhere from 1 to 2 6-yard dumpster loads per month. Next slide, please. Ordinarily, in the past, we've had people come by and pick up and recycle our pallets. We don't see that happening any longer. Now we send most of our pallets and cutoffs to the landfill, which is why we'd love to partner with somebody with some of these products. Next slide, please. In terms of a partnership, we'd love to have these things picked up, pallets once or twice, 3 or 4 times a month if possible. The cutoffs once or twice a month. Next slide, please. Some reuse options: walls, musician stages, farmers markets, artisan markets, arts festivals. For the cutoffs, furniture, sculpture, K-12 projects, you name it. I'd love to hear your ideas on that. Next slide, please. Yes, we've got locations around the country that generate these products that could be used for your project. So feel free to reach out, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Next slide, please. And in terms of assistance, I can absolutely help with other locations if you want to scale the reuse options for this product. These products, both the I-joist cutoffs and the pallets are available, and would love to hear your ideas. I think that's the end of my slideshow.
Yeah, perfect timing, right on the nose.
Right.
Anyone have additional questions?
Well, so I had one question for you. The one number that wasn't on there was the 4x4x4. What is the number that you guys generate on that?
I'm not sure the exact number on that. Probably fewer than the 6.8 and the 8.0s, but I could find out. That was missing from the information that I was able to obtain for the count on that. But I can certainly circle back to that if you like.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So question from Kelly is the wood, oh wait, that was old. Wait, no, this is not old. Okay, sorry. Sorry about that, guys. Kelly asks, is the wood treated with any chemicals?
The pallets, typically not. Spruce and pine are just natural wood. It's usually just a low grade of lumber that's used for those pallets. And so it's unfinished. So that's just a natural. I'm not even sure if it's kiln dried. It might be air dried or even green, but very likely it's a dried wood, not treated. not termite resistant, not rated for soil contact. But with the I-joist cutoffs, you notice that that's OSB, and OSB is more of a sheet material, and so that's going to be built with different resins and glues. So there might be some chemical makeup on that somebody might need to be aware of. And then they're capped top and bottom with a southern yellow pine product. So the answer to your question is that the pallets, natural wood, and the I-joist cutoffs are a combo of a sheet material, OSB, with the yellow pine.
Great. Another question from Josephine is local pickup to community members ever offered for the pallets?
No. There are going to be, we've got trucks all over the city ordinarily, but with a program like this, it'd be more of we prefer to find a partner that wants to be responsible for the bulk of the pallets versus somebody coming in and just picking up a onesie or a twosie. That does create some liability in our yards. And so Builders First Source would be more interested in a program that is more focused and managed versus open to the general public, if that makes sense.
Great. Any other questions? No, I think that's it.
There's another question in the chat.
Oh, just popped up. Got it. Sorry. Amanda Kemp asks, you mentioned in your presentation it's hard to find companies to recycle pallets. Was this mostly during COVID? I know there are companies that are currently doing this again. Is this worth potentially revisiting?
It's something that we revisit. They recycle the pallets and then they fall off. It's usually the companies that are recycling the pallets are making so little from especially when fuel prices go through the roof, they drop off. So it's a very inconsistent way to recycle the pallets. There's it's something that we've done in the past, but it's just not a viable consistent program that we've created with those companies. And another thing to mention is that there are certain municipalities, for instance, Cedar Park, that when the pallets get to a certain number, our locations will get fined if we haven't disposed of them. So obviously it's in our best interest to have them removed from our locations on a regular recurring basis. And that's something that is hard to do with smaller outfits that are trying to recycle them and get just a little bit of money per pallet.
Great, perfect. We are at time. So we are, thank you so much, Wells, for your thorough responses. If anyone has additional questions, please use the networking time to do so. But we are going to scurry on to our fourth presenter of the day, which is Ked Stanfield from Deep Eddy Vodka, who will be pitching about carbon cellulose filter pads that are about 16 inch by 16 inch. And I won't say any more. I'll let you go ahead and take it away, Ked. You are muted. Oh, you're good.
I think I'm unmuted now. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here. You want to go ahead and go to the next slide? There we go. All right, so we're hoping somebody is going to dive in. It's one of our slogans with us and help us find a way to recycle these carbon filter pads. Next slide. So Deep Eddy is an Austin original. Our original facility, which is now our tasting room, is located out in Dripping Springs, but our production facility is located just south of Austin in Buda. Next slide. So my role with the company, I'm the manager of environment and sustainability, and that's one of the focuses, Deep Eddy as a brand. The process of making the vodka itself is very efficient, very waste-free, and we try to keep it that way. But as far as solid waste goes from the plant, we still have some, and my goal is to get our production facility to somewhere between 70 and 90% recycling rate, and our tasting room, we're trying to move that to zero waste. So kind of first thing we're trying to get rid of is some of these hard to recycle, hard to find home for items that we know we're going to have issues with in the recycling programs. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about the brand. We make small batches of vodka, about 2,000 gallons a piece. And we redistill that several times, and then it's filtered through these charcoal pads 4 times, and that kind of reduces some of the other flavorants in there. So vodka, the goal is to make it taste like nothing, and then for us, we add flavorings and finishes back to it. And these pads are used in clear vodka, so there's no sugars, no anything like that. Next slide, please. So these carbon filter pads, we're currently disposing of them in the garbage. So they're, non-hazardous waste, even though they do have a little bit of vodka smell to them that usually evaporates when it's in the dumpster. So you can't really even smell it. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of the pads. They're a little less than 1/4 of an inch thick. They're 16 by 16 inches. We've got, safety data sheets, any kind of stuff we can provide for that if anybody has any more questions from a technical standpoint. And you can see that kind of apparatus up there in the corner. That's what they're running through. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, that's the plate filter that these things are put into. Next slide, please. And you can see it's regulated. It's not a hazardous waste, anything like that. Even after we, put vodka through them, they're non-haz. So there shouldn't be any issues with reuse or anything like that. Next slide, please. So we generate quite a few of these. We swap these out a lot. So we're going through 1,600 to 2,800 pads per month, and that's year round. And our production has slowly increased. I don't even say slowly, quickly increased. We were already, starting to outgrow that facility. So we're looking at, almost 40,000 a year that we're going to use. Square footage wise, it's 34,000 to 60,000 square feet of these things. Next slide, please. Some of the things we would ask for is regular pickups, and we can make that work with the vendor and our facility in Buda. If we have to have, a different collection cycle or different collection, depending on the volume that somebody can take or pick up, we can work with that. And then Deep Eddy there in Austin off Congress Street, we've got our own, marketing support, co-branding, got a whole team down there dedicated to this. And this is something that is a core value of the company. So if we can, take a waste product, turn it into something that's marketable, we have marketing support to help with that. Currently, we're already paying to dispose of these. Granted, it's not a whole lot that goes to the landfill, but if we do need to pay for a pickup to cover some charges, that's on the table as well. And scalability, these plate presses are very common throughout the industry. Not all of them use the same filter pads, but this is something that we can help connect through suppliers to find others in the Austin area. I'm sure you guys know there's a lot of distilleries that are popping up in and around Austin. So I think that there is some scalability to this. And then, I'm offering my services. I worked in the waste industry for many years before coming to Deep Eddy, so I'm pretty knowledgeable about reuse, recycling, things like that. So we do have some technical advice we can offer. And then if anybody needs samples after this, we can get you some. Next slide, please. So some of the reuse ideas, I think there could be some use in horticulture, agriculture with pots like this. Next slide, please. it could be used as a textile. I don't know how durable it would be. I don't think it would be good for like a clothing product, but I think it could be used for, you know, a tote bag, something like that. These are biodegradable, but it's not, they don't biodegrade quickly enough to be composted. Next slide, please. If these were shredded, they could be used in like cellulose, fiber insulation, soundproofing, things like that. It is, you know, a fiber material. It has carbon in it, but it's fiber material base. Next slide, please. So thank you, Austin. Thanks for everybody being here tonight. If anybody has any questions, let me know.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Ked. And let's see if we already have any questions. Great. So Kelly asked, it seems like there would be moisture content in these carbon pads, right? Can you describe how wet or dry they would be at time of pickup?
They're gonna like feel damp to the touch, but they don't really hold like it's not like a wet t-shirt. It's more like because of the material, it's like water passes through it, but it doesn't really like, it feels damp, but it doesn't like, you couldn't like wring it out like a sponge, I guess what I'm trying to say. And then yeah, these like the vodka does evaporate out of them. There's a very little bit left behind. It depends on the person and what they want, you know, the pickup. If it needs to be done, we can work out a solution for that.
Great. Any other questions? And AC Kane asked the same question. So you've kind of been able to answer both of those with one response. Any other questions for Ked about the filters? It's interesting as this one's kind of the first flexible material. Brent, did you have a question? No, you didn't. You're next. Got it. Okay. Just watching everyone. No questions. Okay. You can also feel free if you'd like to quickly unmute yourself if you don't want to type it or you're moving around and can't type. Wilson asks, what are the thickness of the pads?
They're less than 1/4 inch thick. And they like from like new to use, they kind of puff up just a little bit once we get them out of the bag, but they're pretty thin.
Great. Joe asks, what would be in the filters after they are used?
Just vodka. That's the only thing. And again, that evaporates. And they are black. They're carbon black. I don't know if they would be paintable. You could, if you did like a thicker paint, like a thicker acrylic paint, would probably stick on them. But again, we use there's a lot of them.
Great. Nancy asks, is their carbon effectiveness fully exhausted?
Yes, and that's why we're switching them out. And I would say that once they dried, if you're using it, if you were going to be filtering something, if you're already buying filters or like a substrate material, these would probably work for that, but I don't know that they would be as effective or more effective than just like a fabric filter at this point. Like I wouldn't trust that the carbon would be doing a whole lot.
Would be active, right? So Wilson asked a similar question, if they'd be used, if they could be reused to filter other fluids. So there you go, Wilson. We also answered that question. One more minute. So any other questions before we hand it over to the next one? Good little run there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move ahead to our fifth presenter. Again, keep in mind, you can hop in a room with Ked and ask additional thoughts, questions about this material in the networking session at the end. So we're going to go ahead and move forward to Brent Lobby from Desert Door, who will be talking about and pitching or how to use organic bagasse, B-A-G-A-S-S-E. And so I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Brent.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for the Austin Young Chamber in the city of Austin. And I'm Brent Luby, one of the co-founders and the CEO of Desert Door, Texas So Tall, right around the corner from Ked and our good friends over at Deep Eddy Vodka. We're in Driftwood, Texas. Next slide. So this is our little blue bottle that we make, a little spirit out of a West Texas weed that none of you guys have ever heard of. Next slide. Come on, next slide. So the three of us, that's us there, we're three military veterans. We all met at the University of Texas in 2015. And for those of you that are out there in virtual world that have attended business school, you probably have learned that business school does not teach you either A, how to start a business, or B, how to run a business, but it teaches you a lot about business. We were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to take an elective class exactly to kind of go through how you do that. You know, you come up with an idea, you form a team, do the market research, validation, pro formas, market research, validation, business plan, pitch deck, and ultimately comes out of the class. So what would become Desert Door was formed in the business class. It was much more literal Texas at that time, but it became a passion project, making booze out of a weed that none of you guys have ever heard of. So next slide, please. So one of the conservation and sustainability are one of the core pieces of us. We have three core tenets here, and it's originality, authenticity, and connection. But we wild harvest our plants. That means that every plant that we take out of the Chihuahuan Desert, there's no herbicides, there's no pesticides, there's no water, there's no fertilizer. And so that comes with a great responsibility. Next slide. So a lot of people think that the everything that you do in conservation sustainability is what you do out in the agriculture side of things is, but at its essence, this is what we do. We take that little West Texas weed that you see on the left-hand side there, and we turn it into world-class elixir there on the right. Next slide. So how we do that is we further, it's like what my grandmother taught me as a kid. It's like you can take what you want, but you eat what you take. So what is equally, if not more important to the sustainability aspect of your business is what do you do with the bounty that Mother Nature gives you? And so what we have developed here at Desert Door is world-class, efficient manufacturing processes. And what I mean by that is we weren't very good when we started this. As I mentioned earlier, this was a class project. And so being that it was a class project, I was a Marine pilot back in the day, drank a lot, but never made a drop of booze in my life. So we had to teach ourselves how to do this. There's no YouTube videos on how to do any of this. You can, like, if you want to learn how to make a vodka, a gin, a whiskey, pick your category of spirit, there are that, but there's nothing that teaches you how to harvest a sotol plant, trim a sotol plant, cook a sotol plant, ferment a sotol plant, etc. And so we're 100% self-taught from the ground up. And to be quite honest, we weren't very good at it when we started, and we're still learning day to day. But when we started our process back in 2016, 17, we were getting approximately one bottle of 80 proof, 750 milliliters for every 4 plants that we were harvesting. Now we get about 4 bottles of 750 milliliter 80 proof plant for every plant that we're producing. So we've completely inverted that. And the reason why I'm joining you guys tonight is this is just part of our process of like, how can we do a full turnkey of like end to end from plant to end state of like being, you know, is responsible with the natural resources that we take. Next stage. So that is the actual picture of the byproduct. As you can see, it's extremely fibrous. It looks very similar to, I'm sure some of you guys out there in virtual world have these on your doormats. So think jute, think sisal agave. It is organic. You could grind this thing up and put it in capsules. It's vitamin nutrient rich. There is no measurable protein. There's no measurable energy. Off the charts fiber. But it does have a very high tensile strength. It does have very high mineral strength, and it also has, I do not have the numbers on what it burns at, but it does burn very hot and it burns very long. So next slide, please. So here are some of the ideas that I have seen coming forward. So the way that we currently dispose of it is I've got a animal feed guy that I've got an 18-wheeler, shows up, and he grinds it up, blends it in, puts it in. So it's a very good, nutrient-rich alternative to, like, say, sawdust or other things that go into like lower grade animal feed. So it's a very, very nutrient-rich filler for livestock feed. That's our current disposal method. Next slide. But one, I don't know why that picture didn't come through, but the things that I did research and how I kind of got on this, like I've got a friend who has a daughter up at the New York Fashion Institute. I was just like searching for new jammy shorts on Amazon, and I ended up buying like some bamboo jammy shorts. And so this product is very, very similar to sugar cane and bamboo. It's this, or sisal agave that they harvest out of Morocco. So it's, we're already doing it for animal feed. It could be dog treats. You can grind it up. Now, the thing about grinding it up into flour, it does require a special mill. You can't just use a standard mill for this because it is a challenge, but it would be a great, keto alternative. You can make tortilla chips out of it. We've done it on a small scale, but I haven't found anybody here locally that can do it on a large scale. The natural fiber rugs and mats. If you've ever seen anybody out there with, I think the straw and the tortoise nose, a couple of years ago set everybody on the bamboo straw, craze. So think compostable plates, because like at our facility here, we use both sugarcane and bamboo, like flatware and plates. It can be used for the same thing. My understanding is that one of the 3 large automakers actually used this same material from Patron for plastic resin for their cars. So it can be turned into plastic resin. Going back into textiles. I've had a couple of folks reach out about textiles, but if you can do it with bamboo, you can do it with our product as well. You could use it as, like mulch. I'm not thinking like, if you wanted to, like, this is a bit of a stretch, but if you wanted to throw it around as, a safety surface, like on a playground, the challenge is that animals will eat it. And some animals will colic off it because there's not much sugar left on it. I get about 98% of the sugar off of it, but there's still an element of sugar there. The other thing is that I mentioned earlier to one of the speakers about, we were talking about bricks. I had looked into this with one of the, Fortune 500 companies, CMEX, about using this as an alternative to fiberglass substrate in their cement. I was thinking, okay, this could be a sort of like eco-friendly cement. However, you got to take that a step further. We have proven cement, right? And then it's not just whether it's eco or not in the studies, but it's the liability associated with it. So there's a legality, it's like folks are going to hedge their bets, and it's the risk associated with that. Also, I have proven that this can become biochar. So you can use it for carbon sequestration uses as well.
Great. So I am going to stop you there. I wanted to make sure you were able to finish those reuse ideas. I don't know, Brent, if you have an additional slide with your contact information, we can throw that up there if you do.
No, so we're talking about economics. So this is
Oh,
just how much we produce.
Go ahead and throw that slide up there, Joanna, if you can. Let's leave that up there in case someone had a
Yeah,
question.
so currently right now we're doing about 17 tons a month. It's because we got a little ahead of ourselves last year, but next year probably about 34 tons a month. And so where that comes down to economically is your best bio, char thing, you're probably going to get about $30 a pound all the way down to, or I'm sorry, per ton, all the way down to biofuel is like $10 a ton. I'm currently getting like $12 a ton right now. And I'm just out there looking for, folks that if you've got great ideas, I make a lot of it. So, I'd spoken with the guys earlier about like, what does that look like? And I'm a 100% sensitive to everybody out there in virtual world. If you've got a great idea, we can start looking about ways to kind of partner. If it's a great idea, it's free, and then we can figure it out from there on out. Ultimately, I don't want it to cost me a dime to get out of here.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brent. I have a couple questions in the chat. I'm just gonna say not all of them are directly related, but we did have a question. Upshot asks, you mentioned y'all wild harvest. Are you replanting new seeds or Sotal plants when you remove one?
No, we are not.
Okay. The next question, Nancy Leona asks, perhaps a bit unrelated, but who owns the plants that you harvest? Is it owned by Desert Door?
Yes.
Another question that we have by Amanda Kemp is, can you just compost the material?
You can, but here's the thing. So you have to look at like how the byproduct is being used. And so like the lowest use of it is going into the landfill. Closely behind that is compost. So the highest order of use is when you can actually make something out of it. And so compost is above putting it in the landfill, but it's better if you can find somebody that can actually repurpose it.
Absolutely. Thanks for that clarification. And then Adams asked, what about making rope with it? Could it be used to make rope?
Absolutely, 100%.
100% Adams. Any other question? Coming through. We have about a minute left. So any other last questions before the networking part?
It's got like super lightweight carbon fiber strength. I bet you the rope would, I mean, it's crazy. These stalks that actually bloom, this is like one of the coolest plants that nobody's ever heard of. And so the stalks that bloom, the plant will bloom multiple times throughout its life form. It's not like an agave that just shoots up once and then dies. Indigenous peoples use these plants for 10,000 years. And the stalks are super lightweight, and I dare you to try and break one over your knee because your leg will break first. It's amazing what it can do.
It's really fascinating. And thinking of the widespread use and adaptation of using bamboo for things, it sounds like there's a lot of
and no, Joe, don't feel silly for buying one to plant in your yard right now, because if you're anywhere local, we have a little nature walkout in front of the distillery, and we had all of these types of agaves, because there's like 330 something types of agaves, and there's only 22 species of Sotal and a couple other succulents. We had them out in front of our distillery, and then snowpocalypse happened. And if you're not in the local Austin area, snowpocalypse was for real. The only thing left standing out there was Sotal. And so all the agaves are dead. And the Sotal, there's a reason the Sotal's been around for 10,000 years. So if you don't have a green thumb, plant the thing, it's going to be just fine.
It's resilient. Great. Sounds like we're going to have some people buying it. One last question, then we'll switch over and I'll make a little plant segue for us. But do you have any information about what kind of special mill that you might need to grind the fibers? Jennifer
I
asked.
understand it's a hammer mill.
Got it. Okay, great. I love how efficient you are answering questions. We're now going to move to our last, but definitely not least presenter of the day. Speaking of plants, we're going to transition onward to the Tillery Street Plant Company, a place where I am and pass almost every day. So really excited to let Josephine Montminy talk about pitch about potentially opportunities for recycling their polypropylene plastic pots and trays. So Josephine, feel free to go ahead and take over the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Josephine Montminy, and I've been working at Tillery Street for about 3 years now. And today I will be presenting on polypropylene number 5. And for the entrepreneurs, it would be derived from all the plastic nursery pots that we get throughout the seasons. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the nursery. It was perfect. It was opened in 2010, and it's run by people who are super enthusiastic about plants and artists. We have a bunch of local artists distributed throughout our shop as well. We're on the same property as East Austin Succulents, and we provide knowledge and classes and resources out to our surrounding community. Next slide, please. All right, so what is HDPE? It's high density polyethylene that is a thermoplastic polymer made from petroleum. And it's one of the most popular plastics because of its density, like it's lower density, and it's found in many different things from like fiber, like cloth fibers, all types of packaging for food. And to tie into already automotive, it's included in a lot of cars, like bumpers, like they were mentioning before. Any type of consumer product, I mean, we don't even realize how much plastic is around us every single day of our lives. This is something that you see every single day, and you might not even know that that's exactly what it is. I'd also like to mention that the melting point is around like mid 200 Fahrenheit. And then once you get to 350 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when the extrusion process is going to happen. So basically that's when it's put through a machine and it can be melted and pushed through a small opening. And when it comes out of the opening, if it's the right material, it's going to harden off and turn into like a pellet or a granular. People use the pellets and the granular. It's the most kind of like common form of recycling this type of plastic on a large scale. And so they'll take the pellets and granular from previous objects, melt those back down again and make something new. This type of plastic can be recycled up to like 2 to 3 times. Next slide, please. All right, so what this product looks like throughout the nursery, it really just depends on seasons. I'd also like to mention that there's a landscape company that runs out of our nursery. And so they're in the spring, you know, they're like pulling in trailer truck loads of things that like empty pots that they just planted that day. And I mentioned that we get weekly shipments of plants, also really heavy in the spring. And we often have like a ton of 4-inch to 6-inch pots and trays. And let's see, there's a lot of different sizes that we get, but the most we're gonna have is gonna be like the smaller things. Also, we get a lot of like pots will bust. And so, you know, then those can't even really be returned to the community. The best like choice for that would just to be recycle it because it ends up going in the dumpster anyways. So I also say around 20 trays a week and 40 pots a week, between 2 and 6-inch. This number does vary with like, sometimes we'll have a lot more than that. We also have variety of different types of plastic, like the other types of high density plastic, the other numbers. Next slide, please. All right, so this is how we're currently managing the overload of product. So when we have a large amount, we'll get like really big 15-gallon ones, and we'll sell those for like a small cost back to the community if they want to, you know, use them for potting up like large trees or anything like that. And then with all the smaller stuff, we just put it out, and we often have people come and ask for it, or we'll just put out a stack, you know, by our front gate and say like free to anyone who needs it. And most of the time they're gone in like a day or two, which is good to know that people are grateful to be able to use this. A lot of the time we have customers drop off excess pots as well. I accepted someone on the phone to bring in all these pots, and then he ended up bringing like 50 to 60, and I thought it was just going to be like 5 to 10. So there's a lot of people that have this resource all around Austin, and not only is the nursery interested in this, but I'm sure a lot of community members would be interested because people are always trying to recycle their plastic pots and kind of be more efficient when they're working in the garden. And I'm sure other nurseries would be interested in this as well because you just gain a giant stockpile. Next slide, please. All right, so this is kind of a scary picture, but I just wanted to include this because it does relate to what I'm presenting about today. And this was a Florida nursery supplier company. They, had this giant, giant stock of plastic pots that they would outsource to many other different people. And they ended up having a really, really bad fire that started around like 2 a.m. at the beginning of February. And they have a really big property, like over 5 acres. I thought this was just interesting news. People don't always see stuff like this. It doesn't always get broadcasted about. And then that also ties into having all of these nurseries around Austin that have such a large quantity of this. It's a lot better to try and get it recycled back into the community instead of just sitting anywhere holding up space. Next slide, please. All right, so this is how we're able to accept it or have the community come by. And the entrepreneurs, you can pick it up for free when supply is in stock. And that could be something that whatever's most efficient for the person, if you want to come by every week and check out, or if you want to come by once a month and do a bigger haul. Next slide, please. All right, thank you so much everyone for your time. Here are some of our little cats that I included. We have lots of them and they all have names and they would all love to meet you because most of them are pretty friendly.
Great.
So much.
Thank you so much, Josephine. We're going to open it up for Q&A. So any questions, feel free to throw in the chat. Throw it in the chat. Or you can unmute yourself at this point. Open to any and all questions. Great. Joe asks, other than disease, why are they not reused in the industry?
So they typically, do you mean like specifically going back to our wholesalers that we source from, or do you mean like within the nursery itself? We often reuse a lot of the ones within the nursery. And then when they get busted or break or a handle or anything like that, they just aren't of as good of use to us. And so you'll either take them home for your own garden or they just go in the trash.
Great question. Any other questions?
Just wanted to chime in on that. Could you answer on the wholesaler side?
So for the wholesaler, I know that we do, Far South is another nursery in Austin. And I know that sometimes we'll give them a call when we have a large stock and say, hey, are you interested in picking this up? That's the only local wholesaler that I know of that we have kind of like given back to each other in that way. Other wholesalers come on larger trucks, the delivery trucks, and they don't always really have room, to kind of add that onto their truckload.
Great. Any other questions? Great. Wilson asks, when they are heated and extruded, what types of products have people made with them? So
people will kind of remake they'll recycle them in the same forms that they are typically used for. So if it comes in as, a nursery pot, it could be melted down and turned into a container that could hold a liquid or a big storage box, basically anything that you could create with a high density plastic. In terms of food grade, I don't have the knowledge of that melting point. Would it still be safe for holding food?
Yeah, that's the one thing I was going to comment on is you said be careful about food grade.
Yeah,
food.
definitely.
Any other thoughts, questions? I see Kane asked the same question. So again, we answered 2 questions in one. Any other questions in the chat?
I would say that, the extrusion process is going to be something, that's when I was doing this research that is what I was finding, like larger recycling companies are doing in like sustainability projects. So on a smaller scale, it might be harder to find the material to be able to do that. But it could always be like cut up and broken down and, used to build something else or used for art or anything like that.
Great. Awesome. Well, we are at time. So thank you, Josephine, for answering those questions. And thank you everyone for participating. When I say we're at time, it means we're done with the presentations and we're going to move forward and open up some networking. But before we do that, I would love to, first of all, give it up for all the material suppliers who have the heart and intention to be circular and environmentally responsible with these materials. And so do feel free, if you haven't clicked anything yet, click on that little reaction arrow at the or emote at the bottom of the screen and show a little appreciation with some clapping of hands. So thank you again to all the material suppliers. And also a few reminders before we move into networking. The interest form that we call the intent to complete or to compete form, which requires a 1 or 2 sentence description of your idea with a mentor request, must be submitted by midnight on March 12th. You must complete this as your first step in the competition, and you'll receive an additional submission information with links following this via email. All registered competitors who receive a link to register for the free workshops on March 21st and 28th will receive a link to register for those workshops, and they are a recommended resource to help you with your business concept. Maybe kind of adding on to or elaborating with what Brent said. Even if you went to business school, you might need additional support to be able to help you thinking about how to actually build a business. And these workshops might be a good place to start thinking of that business model around that. The recording from tonight's presentation will be posted at reversepitch.org and will also be sent out via email to all of us who registered. Thank you again to the planning team, organizations, promotional partners, and Innovation Prize supporters to make this pitch competition a reality. And if you have a moment, we'd also love to receive your feedback for tonight's event. You can find a link for that in the chat. Megan just shared it.